Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. We get to talk about another Tottenham Hotspur victory. Weird, isn't it? It's been a very interesting end to the season. Obviously one left to play, but certainly there's been a few positive kind of green shoots coming through, and certainly Mourinho's very happy with his players at the moment. He's given them a few days off. Some of them have headed off abroad to. Before you worry, some of those places where you don't have to quarantine when you come back from, the likes of France and places like that. I think they call it the Sky Bridge, don't they? Currently, where you're allowed to go back and forth. So I've certainly seen the likes of Sissoko. I think Lloris has headed off. I think Lamela, Foyth, Gazaniga and Davinson Sanchez all headed off for a little mini break as well. We're only talking a couple of days. I mean, yeah, there's a part of you that probably thinks you're about to kind of go off anyway for your holidays, especially with Spurs not having any European stuff to look forward to next month. But I think it's just a little reward for a real fast and furious period of games where Spurs have been playing every 3-4 days, and potential four in a row unbeaten if they win at the weekend. I think they're five. It would be 5 unbeaten in all. So yeah, if it's a little motivational thing, I guess, why not? But yeah, let's talk about that last game. We've got loads to get through today, so you're going to hear me kind of trying to rattle through a lot of things. Got the stats out again because people seem to quite enjoy those in the last video, so I've got a few of those coming again. So let's dive straight into the Leicester game. I must admit, I was a little bit surprised because I thought it was really dominant. I thought, when I say dominant, I think this is what they're going to be the crux of it all. It depends how you kind of term domination. For me, domination is in the scoreline, is in the level of the chances you create, and the fact that for me, Tottenham could have won that game 4-5-0, and I don't think Leicester would have had any complaints. After the game, I saw a few people moaning. Obviously, there's a part of me that kind of thinks, can we really moan about a Tottenham victory right now, especially a 3-0 win? And I think a lot of that came from the 29% possession thing, which, I mean, it was very deliberate as well. It's not that Spurs just played at home and deliberately thought, hey, we're going to give up, 71% of the possession to Leicester. It's just not exactly what happened. Well, I suppose in a way they did. I was about to say, in a way they did, because that was exactly what Mourinho told me afterwards. I've kind of completely led you down the wrong path there. That is pretty much exactly what they did. In what I'm trying to say is they didn't go into it, trying their best but accidentally handing them that position just because they were bad. Actually, complete opposite of what I was trying to say. It was a very deliberate ploy. And Mourinho, I asked him about it after the game, and actually, I'm really enjoying this about Mourinho right now, is whether it's me and whether he just thinks this guy needs a tactical lesson or two, which could be the case, he's properly going in depth into why he's done stuff. And, the other week he joked about should be paying for these classes, but this time he was very much just offered it up really without much prodding. And what he said was, Leicester had their injury problems. They got Chilwell out, Maddison. I've completely forgotten the name of the central defenders. It's Soyuncu. I'm never sure how you pronounce it. And so they're missing some key players that have been really important to them. So he said, so they've kind of gone with this system with the back three, and they're quite uncomfortable, he felt, in possession. So what he thought he'd do was just, you probably saw it in the match, that Spurs often will press the defence of the opposing team, especially at home, and they didn't do it. They just let the defenders have the ball. And Mourinho said that's because we kind of felt that they wouldn't know exactly what to do with it. And it was the case that they struggled. And the other thing he did, which you probably noticed, was Aurier and Davies sat back. They did not go forward, barely at all. There were no overlaps, anything like that, which, for Aurier is obviously unheard of this season. But what that did was that stopped them playing the balls over the top and using the gaps behind the fullbacks to get Vardy in. And it worked absolutely perfectly. I know we can moan about the 29%, and I think obviously, it was 24 shots Leicester had. I think, about 19 of those shots were just efforts from distance that did nothing because they were frustrated. This wasn't a case of peppering Tottenham's goal. Lloris played very well, but I'll come on to that in a bit. But in terms of the actual quality of the chances they were creating, they really weren't, anything that they felt they should have got something from that game from. And I felt Spurs controlled it. And that's what I mean by dominating. They really controlled the way the game went. and they looked like they would score every time they swept forward. You know, I love Spurs on the counter attack, and I think the best thing to say is, you know, about the 29% possession thing is Tottenham earlier in the season against Newcastle home at 80% possession. To put that into context, that's the second highest amount of possession that a Premier League team has had since they started collating records for that sort of thing, and they haven't won the match. You know, Spurs lost 1-0 that day. I think it was Joe Linton, wasn't it, scored. 80% possession ultimately just means very little. I mean, we saw it, you know, last night with Arsenal against Aston Villa. It means nothing if there's no actual idea to get behind and attack the team you're playing against. It just literally is passing the ball sideways. And this is the thing. Leicester's possession was mainly in their own half. And Spurs just were so lethal. And I loved this under Pochettino as well. I loved it whenever they kind of they were able to kind of let loose and absolutely fly at opponents. They've got the pace, they've got the quick thinking, I'd say, and I apply this to a lot of Spurs players. I think I've used it on Son before, but it's probably something you can use about all players. I feel that instinctively, when they don't have a lot of time to think about stuff, what they produce is sometimes magical. Honestly, it's so instinctive. I feel almost when Spurs, a lot of the players have a little bit of time to think about something, that's when they fall down. And they don't, I think Mourinho said it before, they're ponderous. They touch the ball one too many times. And so for me, when Spurs are attacking at that breakneck speed, that's when they're at their best. So it did. It worked absolutely perfectly. It was a really good game plan. And you know, I know a lot of people see Mourinho as this dinosaur, this guy that can't survive in the modern age. I've seen a lot of that written and said. But games like that and the game against Arsenal as well just proved to me that this guy tactically is it's just got that thing about him. I mean, obviously, we see the silverware that he's won. And, you know, the last silverware's only come in, what was it, 2 years ago or so? It's like, this isn't a guy that's completely outdated, doesn't know how to work in the modern era because he's able to beat these teams in the modern era. I think this is very much a Tottenham team in development, but stuff like that really, and I feel the Spurs players are buying into it massively. And we'll come to Eric Dier in a bit as well, and some of the comments he came out with, and I felt that really shows just how much the players are now, they want to see the results, don't they? If they can see what's actually it's a bit like Pochettino in the early years, in the early months, he struggled to get the players round. And then when they started to see the kind of fruit of the labours, as it were, you feel, okay, all right, I'll buy into this. Let's see where we're going to go. And with Mourinho, I think that's starting to happen. And I think that's why we're getting this run now towards the end of the season, which hopefully will go into next. So, yeah, let's talk about Harry Kane. Harry Kane, another 2 goals, the second of which was vintage Kane. It was a bit reminiscent of that Arsenal goal he scored when he whipped off the face mask and ran off, you know, that classic goal, just kind of cutting in and curling a shot, which, you know, just Schmeichel had absolutely no chance. So let's get a bit statty here, because we did it a bit with Kane last week, and I think it still needs to just be updated. So 203 goals now in 351 games. As I said before, faster than the likes of Ronaldo, Henry, Aguero, Rooney, and getting to that 200 number. And these were, you know, and this is a player who went out on loan to the likes of Orient, Millwall, Leicester, Norwich, you know, in his early years. So he wasn't playing a lot of games. He was mainly bench appearances then. He wasn't getting a lot of goals. It was about his learning. So you've got all of those games as well put into that total. You just think when he actually became a first team regular at Spurs, you know, someone is going to have to do the stats for that. They must be phenomenal. And, you know, just this season alone, 23 goals for Spurs in 33 games. 23 goals for Spurs in a season when he's had absolutely so many injury issues. In total, if you're going to include the England goals as well, it's 33 goals in, 39 games. It's just ridiculous. This guy has had a serious hamstring injury. You know, he's missed. He didn't kick a ball for 6 months, and this is what you get. And you know, I know we've had certain pundits say that, you know, he's going to struggle under Mourinho. That's 13 goals in 18 games now under Mourinho. He's not struggling whatsoever. Any chances he comes, that man will take. But what I really want to talk about Kane with, the interesting thing I felt Mourinho said afterwards, he came out with this comment, which some people were a bit, ooh, really? And I do agree with. He said, you know, Harry Kane is world class. He's brilliant. Anyone who works with him, plays against him, will tell you that. He said, but what I do wonder is he's in a club that essentially he'll never be as special anywhere else as he is at Tottenham Hotspur. And I think some people took that in the wrong way. They took it as, oh, it won't be as good at another club. Not a chance. Harry Kane at Man City, let's say, with the chances they create, would score probably hat-tricks each week. He'd be ridiculous. But being special is a different thing. And I mean, with Kane, he's absolutely adored at Tottenham. You know, one of our own is obviously the common statement. He's the centre of marketing. Within the club, he's got such kind of adulation and also a degree of power. In the dressing room, he's a respected voice. You know, if Lloris does ever go, he will become the captain of Tottenham Hotspur. The managers, Pochettino, really believed and gave a lot of weight to the opinion of Kane. Mourinho does the same. You know, we all know what happened in the Champions League final. Kane was always going to come back in. Whatever people want to moan about or say at the time or even in hindsight, whatever. Harry Kane was always going to play that game, even if he was 50% fit. That was just going to happen. And I suppose you also look at the way he's treated by other clubs' fans. They're horrible to him. Let's be honest. I'm not obviously tarring everyone the same brush, but a lot of people. I saw his baby gender reveal video the other day. Oh, if you feel like looking at how humanity's horrific sometimes, and just the way they treat people, look at the comments underneath. Some of the stuff about his parents, things, the way he talks, it's just like he's not respected, you know. And if you ask a lot of other clubs' fans who the best strikers in the world or even the Premier League are, they're probably not even going to put Kane in it. And I think that's the ethos of this not being a special elsewhere. I think he'd be appreciated more at that club, but would he be seen as special and by the own club's fans and everyone else? I don't think so. I think he's got that love at Spurs, and I think that's what Mourinho meant. So yeah, Harry Kane. Let's move on to Lucas Moura. Lucas Moura, I've given a little bit of stick in the past, and we'll come to that because I still believe a lot of that's valid. But what I really felt was this was the Lucas Moura on Sunday that I really want to see, and I think everyone wants to see. He absolutely, in the final third, was everything he can be. You know, set up the first goal, obviously, for Kane. Second goal, worked hard to win the ball back. The pass itself sent him a bit deep, but then we wouldn't have had the brilliant goal that he produced. And he absolutely hit this beautiful volleyed pass that was phenomenal. Actually, just before I move on, because I forgot it, Harry Kane hit a pass, a no-look pass to Son. I think it was in the second half. That was one of the best things ever. If you hadn't seen it or didn't get a chance to see it, see it. If it was Kevin De Bruyne or someone like that, the Premier League would have been wetting themselves over it. Honestly, it was brilliant. But back to Lucas. Lucas played a brilliant ball as well. A kind of cut across volleyed ball up the pitch to Kane, who probably should have done better. Maybe should have been his hat-trick. So my thing with Lucas is he was superb, and I think it's rounded off, or I suppose there's one more to go, but a really nice bit of form from Lucas. I think he'll always work hard. He'll always battle away. He will leave everything on that pitch. There's no denying that. And he can be dangerous. He can, you know, he will run at guys. My big thing with him is sometimes he'll run with his head down, and he'll just go into the second or third player when, like we saw on Sunday, he's an intelligent guy. He can play. He can pick out a clever ball. He really can. And I think that's what I want to see more of, because I'm going to give you, it wasn't a play on words either, I'm going to give you a little kind of look at the stats here. So those 2 assists yesterday were his first assists in any competition since February. I know we've had the gap, but obviously that's a lot of matches as well. So that's his first assist since he set up the Steven Bergwijn debut goal against Man City. Now, when do you think his last assist was pre that Bergwijn goal in February? I'm just going to give you a moment. Have you got it? If you haven't, or you read my piece that I wrote about it the other day, it was the opening day of the season. This is what I'm talking about, against Aston Villa. This is my only Lucas issue, because I do think he's a brilliant guy. He's probably one of the most popular players at the club. And I think he has so much ability. But I think those assists, if he can continue, just find, maybe Mourinho will get it out of him. I really hope he does. Because if you can get, he's got everything else to his game. He's tactically very aware and intelligent. We saw against Arsenal. He's essentially another left back. He was superb. But that just extra bit, you know, to have, let me see, I've got all the stats written out here. So 4 assists in total in the Premier League. So that's 2 on Sunday, 1 back in February, and 1 on the opening day of the season. And also, 1 in the Champions League as well. So that's 5 assists in 46 games this season. Last season, just 2. 1 in the Premier League and 1 in the FA Cup. And in the first half of his original season, his only assist in the Premier League came in the final day against Leicester. And I think he got 2 or 3 more against, I think it was Rochdale and Swansea in the FA Cup. So, you know, we're talking about 6 assists in 72 Premier League games in total and 11 assists in 106 in all. That's not enough for Lucas Moura. He's way more talented than that. He scored goals. Obviously, we can't discount goals. He's got 14 goals in the Premier League in total across those 106 games. 23 across the entire 106, 14 in the 72. So for me, I just want to see that upped a bit. He's got, like I say, I think there's a hell of a lot more to his game, and he can add that in. I mean, we look at Son. Son's got 85 goals and 47 assists in 228 games. That's almost, I know it's double almost the amount, actually more than double the amount of games that Lucas has played, but I remember I kind of worked out if you'd halved it and all that sort of stuff, we're still looking at around 4 times the amount of direct involvement in goals. And I think that's just the next step for Lucas. He's 28, so hopefully it's not, Leopard can't change his spots and all that sort of thing, but I think Mourinho will, hopefully Mourinho loves him. He's got a manager who absolutely has utter confidence in him. And if he can just do that, I think he genuinely can become a Premier League star. He's just got to find that consistency in the final third and make those intelligent decisions. Because if we see more of Sunday, he was superb. Lloris, I want to talk about Lloris. Lloris, I thought, was phenomenal. And I'd say Lloris, since the restart, has been probably in his best form of season, best form for a long time. And I think a lot of that has to do with he's finally got a real concentrated time to work with Nuno Santos, the goalkeeping coach. Because don't forget, when Mourinho first came in, Lloris was out. He didn't return until, late January. Then he had about a few weeks working with Santos. And then we had the lockdown, where obviously he was at home. So now he's since he's come back, he's had this proper time, fresh new goalkeeping coach after Tony Jimenez before. And just kind of, that wakes you up. Working with a new coach, it's like when you have a new boss in your workplace who just makes you do things differently. It changes things up. It's not saying he's better or worse, but it just gives you a little bit of a fresh impetus. And I just feel that Lloris, I think reflex-wise, some of the efforts, who was it? I think it was Perez early on, a volley, flying save, It's one of those where you slow down and you don't think it's that great. When you watch it in real time, you realise just how quick he had to be. And some of the long distance, totally obscured efforts that you couldn't see that he pushed over. He's been phenomenal. And also, as I said before, being there in the stadium without the crowd, you can hear. I think he's got louder. He may have always been doing it, but I swear I never heard him bellow as much as he does and organise. And I think that's made a big difference. As we saw, I thought the defence were all excellent on Sunday. All of them. Sanchez and Alderweireld was superb in the middle, mopped everything up. I thought Aurier Davies had very simple jobs. They didn't have the attacking roles to do, so they just concentrated on the defending, and I thought they did pretty well. But yeah, I just want to give a kind of a heads up to Lloris, because he doesn't always get the respect he deserves, I feel. And I think we're seeing a bit of a renaissance for him. And yeah, I thought he was superb. I mentioned Son earlier. Son, after the game, picked up all the Player of the Season awards afterwards, all 4, exactly like he did last year. I was trying to think whether I'd give it to him as well, and I think it's a tough one, because for me, and I had this discussion with someone, I can't remember, someone on Twitter said it, and they were quite right, in terms of Kane has been so good and he scores so many goals that maybe we take him for granted, and obviously he's missed a chunk of this season. And I do always think it's one of those a bit like, I'm not comparing him to Messi, but with Messi and Ronaldo, maybe sometimes you actually forget just how brilliant they are because you expect them to do it. And I think maybe with Kane, maybe he gets overlooked for awards sometimes because he's just doing what he does. But I do think Son has been there for Tottenham. In some tough times when Kane was out, I think he's stepped up. I wouldn't say actually it's probably been his best in terms of the performances, but in terms of the goals and assists, I think it's 22? Obviously another goal. Well, it wasn't a goal, was it? It was an assist in the end because it was an own goal in the end. But, I think in terms of, the combination of direct involvement in goals, I think it's his best ever Premier League season. So, yeah, maybe. I think Lo Celso probably was in the running at one point. Let's be honest, there's not a lot. It's been a pretty awful season. But I'd say maybe Kane, Lo Celso and Son were the 3. And then I think maybe it's fair for Son. Maybe, just because he's been there for the team when they needed him the most. Obviously, we've had Eric Dier, got a new contract as well this week. His comments were really interesting. He pretty much said, he feels like a 20-year-old again, starting again. He's got this special relationship with Mourinho. And he says that he believes, like the manager does, that they're going to win silverware. And he didn't want to leave Tottenham. He said, if the day comes when I do leave Tottenham, I don't want it to have been without winning silverware. And there's a real belief in Mourinho bringing that. And I think that's really interesting. And I think Eric Dier's a very intelligent guy. Probably, up there in the kind of the highest IQs in that team. Very, very intelligent guy. And I think if he's bought into it, a lot of those other players have as well. And I thought it's really good. I know there's a lot of people that he has his detractors out there. For me, I think in a Mourinho system and now working as a centre-back, Dier actually said he wants to become the best Premier League centre-back, best centre-back in the entire Premier League, which is a big statement, but Mourinho believes him in that position. I think he's actually going to have a little struggle getting in on Sunday back into the team because I think Sanchez and Alderweireld have done really well. But I do believe that as a leader of that back line, with the ability to come out with the ball and play passes as well, I think he's should have a big future there if Mourinho develops in the way he has. Mourinho is a bit of a centre-back whisperer. He's had some absolutely brilliant centre-backs over the years, so there's no hiding the fact that he may well be able to do that. It's all about improvement, and Dier's had a tough couple of years. 18 months or so, appendicitis. Was it a perforated, infected appendix that he had to have out, and that really affected the way he played when he came back. He got a lot of illnesses. Because of the tablets he was on and stuff, his immune system was really low, and he was just getting all of these little niggling problems and illnesses, which were all associated with that. And obviously, when he did play, he looked rusty. But I just feel that ever since he's come back at centre-back, Sheffield United aside, because everyone was crap that day, I think he's shown that he's got a future there. And clearly, the club and Mourinho believe it as well. Mourinho made a real point of saying that, I'm building my future around this guy. So yeah, let's just give him a little bit of time, because Eric Dier in that second Pochettino season, playing as a defensive midfielder that stepped back into the back three or made a back three by splitting them, and in the third season, when he actually was a member of that back three, Spurs had the best defence in the Premier League for those 2 years. So, he's no mug. He really isn't. I just give him a bit of time to get back to where he was, and I think you'll see. I wouldn't be shocked if you see him playing in defence for England. Honestly, I think we'll see a real kind of turnaround in his fortunes. I think it was starting to happen before that suspension as well. So yes, Eric Dier, I think all word seems to be that Japhet Tanganga will be certainly one of the next to come through with the contract. They're just trying to sort that out, just the final bits and pieces hopefully. So that would be great, another defender. And then you start to look at it and you think, if Dier is comfortable playing on that left side of the centre-back pairing, they may decide, especially with Davies able to cover there, that maybe Alderweireld, Sanchez, Dier and Tanganga, with Davies able to also play as a centre-back if needed, they might decide maybe to save their money and not. But, I do know they're going for, they are looking at Kim Min-jae from the South Korean talented young 23-year-old big lad named the Monster. He plays in Beijing at the moment in the Chinese Super League. They certainly have made inquiries about him. So I think with him, it's probably more of another body, but also a potential developing player. I think Beijing, they're talking around, 15 to 20 million. Beijing don't want to lose him. I think that's been a real sticking point. But this kid, I've spoken to South Korean football experts, Sung-mo Lee in particular. You might know his work. He's very, very good on his South Korean players. And he said this guy is like one of these generational players. He said he would be the best he's the best, I think he said the best defender South Korea have produced in this century. And he said, and he would easily be the best Asian defender to have played in the Premier League. So, they've got real high hopes for him. So if it's a transfer like that, which clearly, and I know people hate this term when it comes to Spurs, but an investment, I think that would be the kind of player, that they'd go for. And I think once you've got that, that's a good group of 5 defenders with Davies as well to come in. It allows you to play a back three. I think I'm really, that was another clean sheet at the weekend. I think you can really see the way the defence is going. If we're on transfers anyway, so let's talk about Hojbjerg as well from Southampton. It's a weird one. It's a classic Tottenham scenario in that, we had all the news suddenly broke last night about Everton and an accepted £25 million bid and all of this sort of stuff. From everything I've heard from people around Everton, I know a few people that kind of are involved over there and certainly those who report on the club as well. And everything that seems to be coming out of Everton is like, huh? I think there's certainly are talks going on, but no no kind of indication that any £25 million bid has gone in, and that Everton, are looking at a much lower fee than that for a guy that's in his last year. Now, there also seems to be a real kind of feeling that Hojbjerg wants Tottenham and Mourinho. He made it very clear that when he was leave Southampton and not sign a new deal, he wanted a big step up. Everton are certainly, I think, a club on the up. I think Ancelotti's a great manager. Would it be the big step up that he probably would be looking for? I'd maybe say not right now. Especially with Hasenhüttl as well at Southampton. I think they're going to have a great season next year. If you look at that, we've spoken a lot about the form table under Mourinho and where they'd be if the Premier League season started when he joined. I think Hasenhüttl's 7th, Southampton are. They're a team that I do think they'll probably be like the Sheffield United of next season. I think they're going to have a great season. So I think for Hojbjerg, I think maybe Mourinho and Spurs is that next step, especially with what Mourinho's promising of next season, actually challenging for the title, or getting up there. I do genuinely believe, and I'll probably look like an utter plonker next season, but I do think that Tottenham will finish top 3 next season. I think there's still a lot of work to be done, but I can just see, as Arteta put it, and I'll keep coming back to that, Mourinho finds a way to win. And I think with that pre-season to work with him, a couple of subtle tweaks to the squad, I think top 3 and probably a bit of silverware as well. And I think Hojbjerg sees that as well. Everton are in talks. So this is Tottenham Hotspur, and Tottenham Hotspur may well do what they've done in the past and sit it out and not choose to match whatever bid Everton do eventually go with. But all indication seems to be that Hojbjerg himself wants to move to Tottenham. And it's quite interesting. I asked Mourinho a couple of weeks back about the kind of players that he felt he needed in this coming window and whether he felt Spurs were lacking some experienced leaders. And he actually was really clear and said, no, I'm not going in that direction. He said, players can be leaders and with that mentality, but it doesn't matter about age. And I do wonder whether, indirectly, he was talking about Hojbjerg. Hojbjerg's 24. He was the captain of Southampton until he told them he wasn't going to sign this new contract. But he's been leader there, been a captain, been at Bayern Munich, big experience, and has developed into a very good player in the Premier League. And I do wonder whether that's the type. A leader, someone with big experience that can come in, and is still only 24, so it's a classic Spurs signing. And I think, you're looking at more, not 25 million, you're looking at more between probably the 15 to 18 million range. And obviously Tottenham have the ace in the pocket, in their hand, as it were, of Kyle Walker-Peters, which for me is a massive shame because I think he's shown exactly all the things we've been saying about him, that actually he could be a really good right back for Spurs. But I think Mourinho kind of touched on it. He was asked about it the other day. It's kind of almost like it needs to be whatever Kyle Walker-Peters, what makes him happy. And clearly at Southampton, the fans love him. They've already taken to him. They think he's terrific. And if Spurs can use him to save themselves money in the Hojbjerg deal, and then they'll get themselves another right back, I think that's the way they'll go. So let's see with Hojbjerg. I think that was a strange one. I mean, only going from personal experience, and I'm not saying this is what's happened, but having had experience of dealing with clubs in the past, sometimes there's, if clubs deny that, or indirectly, or off the record or whatever, deny that a bid has been made, either that's because the bid has been rejected or the player has rejected it, or that the selling club are actually maybe just trying to, or selling club or the agents or anyone involved is trying to up the interest from the people they know the player wants to go to. And they know that, this is going to be a real sticky situation if the club who actually he wants to go to don't come in. This is going to run and run and run. And Tottenham have done it. They did it with Sessegnon. I remember Fulham getting so upset with Spurs because they waited and waited and waited on Sessegnon, knowing full well they were the only place he wanted to go to. And then essentially they came in at the last minute and pretty much stuffed Fulham because they couldn't then buy the replacement they wanted with those funds. So Spurs do have history, and perhaps this is Southampton's way of trying to stop that situation happening. But Tottenham still need to make that bid. I'm sure there's been discussions. I'm sure Tottenham will have gone in looking to use Kyle Walker-Peters, or not gone in with a great bid because they'll feel they're in the stronger position. But there will be a point where the player perhaps will just get a little bit like, well, do you really want me that much? And Everton's clearly do, and that's what Tottenham have to avoid. We'll see. And I think in terms of other transfers, it's going to be really interesting to see relegated clubs. I think a lot of clubs will try to take advantage right now of the financial issues, and obviously Norwich some good defenders there. You know, I know people will say, oh, but they went down. It doesn't work like that. You know, you have players in a relegated team who in another team would be perfect. You know, Trippier obviously went down with Burnley. It proved to be a really good right back for Tottenham. So if that's the case with Aarons, you know, Godfrey, even their attacking midfielder, who I'm not sure Tottenham need, but is it Buena? I always get these names terribly mispronounced. But I think he's something created like 4th or 5th most chances in the Premier League for a relegated team. Cantwell's obviously is a player Spurs have looked at. We've got Villa if they do go down, although they had a great result last night. You know, Jack Grealish, I do think Spurs are probably going to be priced out for a Grealish move. And then Bournemouth, there's a lot of players at Bournemouth Spurs have looked at over the years. You know, you've got Ake, King, Brooks, and another one who's completely gone out of my head, but will come back to me at some point. So I do wonder whether, and I know people will say, oh, you know, Spurs doing their shopping in the bargain basement. Unfortunately, that's just where Tottenham are going to have to do it. And I think as long as they're clever buyers and they fit exactly what Mourinho wants, I think he'll mould them into a proper unit as well. So let's keep an eye on those. I think this first deal that Spurs are going to do looks to be the young player Alfie Devine, the Wigan teenager. And, you know, before you get very excited, very talented player, don't get me wrong, a midfielder. But I think this will be very much, as he only turns 16 next month, this will be one for the academy. I think they were looking at 2 Wigan lads, but he looks to be the one that will get done first. I don't think the Spurs would even announce it. It'll probably be one of those we just kind of realise he's there. But yeah, very, very big talent to go into the academy. Probably under 18s to begin with, and then, you know, work his way into the development squad as well. But certainly one for the future. I think he's certainly a youth international. And talking of youth internationals with a big future, I just want to quickly talk about Oliver Skipp. Mourinho said the other day that I asked him about Skipp. What did I ask him about him? I can't even remember. Oh, it was, of course, signed a new contract. Of course he did. And Mourinho went into this thing, which totally surprised me and suddenly changed, I think, a few people's stories are about to write among the journalists, that Oliver Skipp will be a future Tottenham captain. He said very clearly that will happen. He said he wants to go out on loan next season, whether it's for 6 months or a year. And he said, to be honest, I've been quite selfish with him this year in telling him to stick around because we needed him for the squad. But I think that might be best for him next year, just to go out and get some development. And I do wonder, you know, whether it actually might be a Premier League team. You know, I think a lot of people talking about a championship team. I think it may even be a Premier League team. You know, maybe perhaps one coming up, or maybe even if you are going to go to a championship, maybe one of those Premier League teams that's just gone down or will have just gone down, because he's got a big future ahead of him. I don't want to wax too lyrical about Skippy, as he's called, because I've watched a lot of him at academy level and I've spoken about him before, and people know my thoughts on how good he can be. But I thought that was fantastic from Mourinho to say this. You know, he gets flack for the way he talks about young players, I think, sometimes. But to immediately come out and say this kid is going to be one of the future Tottenham Hotspur captains, I thought was great. And it's massive for the guy as well. He's had a couple of appearances as well from the bench since, and probably will come on, I'd imagine, as well against Palace. So that's massive incentive for him now. He's a great kid, absolutely brilliant head on his shoulders, and I think he'll do really well. So yeah, I think one other thing, a little brief mention. I don't want to go overboard on it because I'm not one of those that's going to start dancing about it, but obviously Tottenham, despite the utter chaos and mess of this season, have finished above Arsenal for a 4th consecutive year. That's just mind-blowing. I must admit, I know a few Arsenal fans, you know, I work with some of them, so I was saying to them, not in a like ha-ha, like Nelson from The Simpsons or anything, I'm not going to do the actual voice, but I just said, how have you guys finished below Spurs in this season? And I think ultimately it's two clubs that have had an utter mess of a season, both sacked their managers, but in the end, Mourinho got the points on the board. You know, of course, Arsenal could still end up with a trophy, and that could actually be to Spurs' detriment as well in terms of Europa League qualification. But I think it kind of shows just how Spurs, Mourinho have kind of got the job done to a degree, because I have no idea how Spurs have not finished lower than they have this season, because it's been an utter mess. But yeah, so I'm not celebrating it. I think both clubs have fallen. I think it's probably, I mean, it's a funny little thing in terms of it was so long that Arsenal were above Spurs. So yeah, it's 4 years and you know, Mourinho will be looking to keep that. But I think, as Pochettino said and Mourinho made it very clear, I think now, hopefully, the future is about bigger things than that. But it's just one that's so strange to me. And it's great, obviously, for banter in the office. Of course it is. But yeah, so we finished on Sunday, the last one. Crystal Palace. they obviously struggling as well. They've got some injury issues, and I think they've lost a load in a row, isn't it? Like 6 or 7 or something like that. So I know there'll be obviously Dr. Tottenham jokes coming out. Tottenham do like to help teams that are struggling, but if Spurs can win that game or even draw it, it would be 6 games unbeaten, which just to show how inconsistent Spurs have been over the last few seasons. That hasn't happened. 6 games, just 6 Premier League games in a row without being beaten, hasn't happened since the end of the 2017-18 season. And it was part of a big long run. Spurs under Pochettino had 14 games unbeaten. Since then, Spurs have never, I don't think they've gone above 4 unbeaten in the Premier League in a row, which just shows there's just that lack of consistency that's been creeping in and getting worse and worse. So hopefully this is the start of a new run, and which is taken into next season. But let's see. Dier's back. Dele Alli's meant to be back. Foyth and Tanganga obviously available now. Be really interesting to see whether he keeps with the same team or whether he makes a couple of changes or not. And obviously we then have all the Europa League stuff. Obviously could really do with tonight. Liverpool are playing Chelsea. You'd probably want Liverpool to beat Chelsea so that Chelsea have something to play for on that last day against Wolves, so they don't rest players for the cup final, and that they properly go for it, because Spurs need to win, obviously, and they need Wolves to slip up. It's Tottenham, isn't it? And I think we know what's going to happen. If Spurs finish 7th, we know that probably Arsenal win the FA Cup, and that will take that spot away from 7th place. And also, there's some debate. Some people are saying that if Wolves or Man U were to win the Europa League, it would give the place back to Tottenham or whoever's in 7th. But on looking at it, I don't actually think that's the case. I think there's a maximum limit on clubs, English clubs, that can be in European competition. We're going to look into that. We'll identify it all and go into it all after Sunday. Let's see what happens then first. Spurs need to do their job first and foremost, and then hope that Chelsea do them a favour against Wolves, and hopefully they'll want to sign off their season not in a poor way. I think it's at Stamford Bridge as well. So let's see. But yeah, hopefully enough in there of interest for you. And I'll be back obviously after the game on Sunday, and we'll chat about the season as a whole and obviously what's to come over the transfer window. So look after yourselves, stay safe, and I shall catch you later. Bye.